Okay, I want to talk about something that occurred to me about sort of the nature of capitalism and software engineering. So you have, say, communism, and it never works, tends to kill millions, but whatever. The state owns the means of production, right? That's how that works. Capitalism, private ownership of the means of production, doesn't kill quite as many millions of people. It's great. It's great if you like owning means of production or not dying. So the way that it works theoretically, so you're, Joe Tycoon or whatever, and you put your monocle on and you build a business factory and it makes widgets or whatever. And you hire a bunch of wages to slave in their cages and make you a bunch of profit. They operate your amalgamated widget factory. I do like that example name. So that's a well understood system. We get it. There's something different with software. So if you hire a software engineer to come, like I'll use Google as an example. You hire Google SWE and they come and build software at Google, or they do something like administrate data centers or something like that. And you use the factory analogy on this. What a software engineer is doing there is building more factory. That's the difference. They don't just work at the factory. Working at the factory would be like, I don't know, you pay someone to use Google search or something like that. But they're actually building the factory. When you write code and it mostly works, then you've created new capital. You've created this artifact where now if you leave the company, usually, other than the ops burden, it can create more value for the company. So a customer inputs their data, something happens to it, maybe this is a raw material, and then you output something and it's more valuable than it was before. And then you monetize. You try to figure out how to skim some amount of profit off of whatever that transformation is that you did. But that's the difference. When you're a software engineer, you create more factory. You are building little bits onto the factory. It's like you're adding conveyor belts. You're adding a thing that can stamp metal into something else or whatever. I don't know where that person fits exactly in the model of capitalism. It's sort of the means of production come from the ether and then they just get employed. But in the case of software engineering, we can see it get created. You write software and the software does something. And so that's a little bit weird, right? It's a little different. And the way that capitalism treats owning the capital is you're not just, there's such a thing as a capital gains tax, but capital itself doesn't just gain you things. The capital gains tax is like the difference between two transactions on it. But if you own your business factory, it doesn't just make money. Someone has to do something to make it make money, right? And that's the same for the software. But no one gets, I should say, it's not that no one gets compensated for it. It's just that all that compensation goes to the company. The company they employ people to create software that provides more value, and then they capture all of it. And that's the part that strikes me as kind of strange. I don't know of companies, I guess maybe they're high frequency trading firms or something where they're like, well, you write algorithms, then you run them in production. And then if they make money, you make money. Maybe that exists, but probably. But at Google, that's not how it works. You write software, Google owns the software, Google runs the software. If it makes money, they make the money. And some people will talk about the sort of mythical, you could get like $1 million bonus. Oh, I heard of this guy who got that one time. You write software and it makes ads 10% more efficient. And so they make $50 million more per time cycle. And they're like, if you do that, you could get like $1 million bonus. I've always heard that rumor. I have never heard of a verified case of someone actually making that amount of bonus. I don't think I've heard of anyone producing something that earned Google millions of dollars and then they got like 1% of it. Or maybe I should say like 10. It's easy to get 1% of it because you get paid a lot when you work at Google. But you never earn like the capitalist dream, the share of the wealth that's created by it. Google earns that, and then maybe they deign to give you some, maybe they don't. And I think that creates kind of a shitty incentive structure. So the concrete example I can give is you're a software engineer, let's say, and a PM comes to you and they're like, oh yeah, the push is on Wednesdays, right? And you're like, yeah. And today is Tuesday, and they're like, do you think we're going to be able to get this buggy piece of crap in by the push on Wednesday? Because I would like to get it live in production. It's, our new widget advertising product, and we'd like to get it out there. And you're like, just a second. And then you're like, I'm on call next week. And you're like, okay, so if this buggy piece of crap that I wrote pages somebody, it's paging me, and I don't want to get paged. And so you tell the PM like, no, I don't think it's quite ready. I just haven't worked all the bugs out yet. And, I don't want to do it because then I might get paged. And so fuck it, I'm going to come up with any excuse I possibly can to not get this in. And the PM's like, oh, that's too bad. Oh, if only I knew some way to, create an artificial deadline and push engineers to go faster. But they don't. You've outskilled them. You're a brilliant engineer. And as the engineer there, the thing that motivates you is get your salary, which you're already good. Don't get paged, right? The thing that motivates the PM is ship the product. I want to claim this on my performance review or whatever later. And what the company wants is, please ship it. Please get paged if you have to. Like, ship it earlier. We want to make more money. But sort of no one speaks for the company because it's the company's job to create a mechanism that incentivizes you, and they have failed. They just pay you salary. They pay you bonus if they can detect that you did something valuable, which they mostly can't, and that's it. And so the incentives are all misaligned. As the engineer, you're like, screw it, I don't want to get paged. The PM's like, hey, I asked, and he said no, and so I give up. And we'll launch it a week later, and I'm sure my performance review will still look fine. And the company's like, no, we missed out on a week of earning extra money from whatever this thing is. But there's no one to speak for the company. And you might think, well, who's sad for a multi-billion-dollar company? And it's kind of crappy because that value didn't get created. It could have been, but because the incentives were misaligned, the right people weren't going to capture the value. It's not worth it, right? Like, a lot of people would make that same call. There's a few people who are like, I love getting paged, but not very many of them. So I'm sort of like, would there be a way to give engineers a share of the value that their code creates? I think it's possible. I've brought this up to people, and I always get these couple of objections. Like, first off, they're like, oh, it's going to be really hard. Like, attribution. It's going to be really hard to do attribution. So hard that they think about it for like 5 seconds and they give up. I think that maybe if you think about it for like 5 minutes, pause the video, think about how would you do it? Think about it for 5 minutes. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's just very hard. I don't think it being very hard is a reason to not try. I think it's possible to attribute at least some of the value creation to the engineers who create it and then pay them a share of it. I think that would be really motivating. I've had people tell me, oh, we're intrinsically motivated to do a good job. We want to work hard. We want to help everybody else on the team or whatever. And this would change it to an extrinsic motivation. Then you would just be getting paid to do it. And it's like, I'm paid to come to work, right? Like, you pay people to do stuff. You pay for performance. Pay for performance works really well. And then won't intrinsically motivated people still be intrinsically motivated? Except now someone will also send them like a $500 pat on the back when their thing is valuable. That, at least for me, that'd make me feel extra appreciated. I'd be like, I did a good job. And then 2 weeks later, a check shows up and I'd be like, yeah, I did a good job. Also, here's some money. That's really nice. And I don't know, maybe it's a problem. I don't think so. Some people have said, oh, it'll only reward people who work on things that deliver value to the company. And I'm like, yeah. Do you want people to work on things that don't deliver value? I guess maybe you should go to academia or something. It actually seems like a non-issue to me. People within the company would move around. They'd only want to work on profitable things. Yeah, I guess that's not that bad. That kind of happens anyway at Google. People move into ads. They don't move out too much because when you are in ads and then you do your performance review, you're like, hey, I made X million dollars. I did all this stuff. And they're like, yeah, you're good. Maybe you'll get promoted in 2 more years. Not yet, but eventually. But I don't know. Only work on profitable things. It's kind of what a company should be doing. Something that can eventually be profitable at least. People have said, how would you reward something like a tools team that makes builds faster? And I'd say you're going to have to go sell it to people. And you may have to come up with some internal transaction system in a company. And yeah, that's pretty awkward. Again, that goes to, it's hard, but is it so hard you shouldn't do it? But you could go to the tools team and be like, hey, I'll make you X% more efficient. And they're like, well, if I'm X% more efficient, then I'll build X% more capital over time. And then I'll get not just more money, but I'll make more money more faster. So I think it's possible that would be worthwhile. I proposed something like this to someone who works in sales, and they said it would be hard to hire people if part of your pay comes from this vague calculated thing. And I was like, yeah, that's a good objection. And I said, what if, how do sales commissions work and people getting interviewed and stuff? And they're like, they always promise you the moon. They always have a complicated commission structure. You never make what they say. That's pretty bad. And I was like, yeah, okay. That's a real problem. But again, it's hard, but I don't think it's impossible. It would need to be solved. People have said, what about other roles, like not engineers? And it's like, I mean, sure, I'd love to offer commission to everyone. Like people who answer support tickets, those people are valuable. The work they do is valuable. It would be nice if they made more money if they answered more tickets instead of doing like quota or something like that. I would love to see that. I would love to see the equivalent of like everyone gets commission. I feel like that'd be really motivating. I would have liked to work that way. It also reminds me of this classic people at large companies creating a small team to do a project. And then they say, we're like a startup within the larger company. Or at a startup, they'll do it and they'll be like, we're like a startup within a startup. And they never are. It never is, because all those people just make salary and they don't get to keep any of the value that they create. Maybe they get the bonus, but that's about it. And the reason people do startups is because they're going to get to keep a lot of it. That's why they're like, I want to own 40% of whatever this rocket ship is. Like, you want to own like 40% of Airbnb? Like, yeah, that sounds really great, right? Do you want to own like 40% of Google Ads ships a new feature? Yeah, that'd be really great. Do you want to just work on the team that ships it? And it's like, I mean, I'd earn the same salary working in any other place in Google. So you're not a startup within a larger company unless you're giving people a percentage of what they're creating. And I don't think I've ever heard of anyone doing that. And I've been thinking about this for years and years and years. I mean, really, if I first started getting exposed to it back when I was a sandwich artist in 99 working at Subway. And they were like, hey, if someone buys a sub, upsell them in the combo, have them get a drink and chips. And I was like, I mean, I could, or I could just not ask them, right? Like, that's easier for me. And there was no advantage to me. I was like, why don't they pay me like 10 cents if I upsell them? And you've probably seen that before. Like, if you go check out a grocery store, you can tell that if they offer you the whatever credit card deal is going around, you can tell that they get a commission from that because they are really passionate about badgering you. Are you sure you don't want to sign up for the credit card? It offers no benefits. There's nothing going on there. Do you want to sign up for it? Just fill out the application. You don't even have to get it. Just do the application, please. And you're like, nah. And if you ask them, usually they'll say they get like $1 or $10 or something if someone fills out the application. You can tell when employees are motivated like that. And I would just love to see companies apply that in more places. I think it'd be really cool. Or really stupid. I don't know. I would love to try and make that mistake. Anyway, let me know what you think.